All right, we're rolling. Ladies and gentlemen, happy 250th birthday. Happy 4th of July. And I don't know where you are right now in these continental United States, but it's hot. It's hot where I am. And I just saw something when I was out earlier. There was a dog locked in a car in a parking lot in a strip mall where windows are rolled up. It's hot here. It's over 97 degrees. I think our heat index with humidity is up over 100 right now. This dog is cooking inside that car. I think somebody called the police because that's cruelty to animals, and cops will come up there and knock the window in. Never seen it personally. Plenty of videos on YouTube about it. So, looking over kind of my notes and stuff like that about, like, I was writing stuff down, like, how many times we overlook the signs and symptoms of kind of heat distress in our animals. Moreover, dehydration. So, dehydration is one of those things where you're losing more fluids than you're taking in. And it's easier to lose more fluids than what you can take in and process and get hydrated. Hydration is an all-day event, and it's 7 days a week. You're constantly dehydrated. I wrote an article about this for a buddy's magazine of mine, and it was for human beings, for the operator. But being a retired para-rescue man, we actually have to work on canine downrange, and even potentially here in the United States if we do civilian rescues. So, dehydration can happen and escalate fast with anybody in certain conditions. And it has a lot to do with your age, weight, health, preconditioned health or health conditions. I already mentioned that. Intense activity, not being conditioned for it, not acclimating to it correctly. This goes to your dogs also. And your dogs are a smaller package. It's a smaller size. That's why when we treat our little furry friends, it's milligram per kilogram. It's a dose weight based medication usually, all right, unless it's the pills and stuff like that. But we treat them almost like we treat kids when it comes to medication application. It's a dose based weight for kids until we get to a certain age. So, and a lot of this stuff can be prevented. Planning your routes or your walks differently, maybe later times during the day, earlier in the morning, play times differently. If you're gonna play during the heat of the day, plenty of breaks, maybe a water station if your dog likes water, wet towels, cold carrots, frozen fruits, stuff that's safe for the animal, because they can chew on it and eat it, and that will absorb some moisture and help hydrate that way. Also, while you're playing around, stuff that's fun for them, because sometimes water gets bland for them. My dog doesn't always want to just drink water. He wants to chew on a carrot or something like that. But I notice when he doesn't like to drink the water, what happens is water's not fresh. And I'm always refreshing that water. I don't pour water in the morning and it's there for the rest of the day. I've got to pour these guys fresh water every day because they're used to it. They do drink a lot of water when I notice, because I have two little cat friends too. But so some things to think about if your dog is going into some type of heat emergency or dehydration. Look for behavior changes. Your dog, your animals. What's different about them? I know Big Dummy down here, Sammy, when he's got to go poop, and I've had him out a couple times, and he's still a puppy. He's a 6-month hound healer. And he loves to be with me. But I know when he starts pacing in the house and he gets the meat sweats or the meat pants, I know he's got to go outside and go poop. So recognizing the normal baseline in your dogs is key in order to recognize the baseline shift in your animal, especially if you had them out. Start doing your math and your deductions. And I'm not talking about public school math. I'm talking about, I did have him out here for 35 minutes, ran him pretty hard, came in, he was panting for a while. In those conditions, you can just start cooling him down yourself, In those warm areas where the vessels run closest to the surface, that's where you can get those cold cloths and compresses and get them up underneath the armpits, just like we would in human beings, and down in the groin area too, in the belly. Huge, very vascular in that belly, very exposed. Now, good luck trying to keep that ice on them very long, especially if they're a very active dog, like my 6-month-old puppy here. Another thing, and this is probably a really good test for dogs, not so much older people, well, people like me, yeah, but I wouldn't say your normal range between 20 and 40. I mean, that's a pretty late, I think if you're that age, if you're seeing skin tenting, is what I'm talking about. Pinch the skin if it stays tented, that's dehydration. I don't really use that so much as a diagnostic in my military age male and females, just because you could bounce back from. I don't know what you did the night before or the 2 nights before that, and you're still bouncing back from a hangover you had 2 days ago, because it could take that long. It takes a while for your body to get caught up, you know. So from what I understand, what I heard coming through paramedic school, by the time you feel thirsty, you're already dehydrated. So so look at the skin, you know, grab some skin, pinch it in a non-volatile area somewhere. They're not going to freak out if you do that. Skin. So if it's dehydrated all over the place. It just doesn't work in the shoulders, and you go down to the butt, and all of a sudden everything's fine. As a matter of fact, it would probably be in reverse. I don't know. I just pulled that out of my butt, literally. So, what else did I write down here? So I remember from my notes, you know, the shoulder blades is a good check, the neck's a good check because it's not sensitive, and it's pretty well tolerated, and it's really good. Check their gums in their mouth. You know what wet gums and a wet tongue feels like? It's like a warm piece of veal in there, and then, you know, their gums are nice and glistening. They should be pink, you know, red and moist. I remember my buddy telling me, he was the canine handler. He's like, had my dog out running him 80-degree day, probably 60% humidity, ran him for 45 minutes, ran him hard the other day. And he's like, this guy got exhausted easy. You know, in 45 minutes, he shouldn't have been exhausted and dehydrated. He's like, the first thing I noticed, and I should have noticed earlier, but his tongue was out and it was hanging off to the side. He's like, that's a telltale sign right there. Your dog's getting dehydrated or in the process of dehydration. So look for sunken eyes. That'd probably be a pretty late stage. I think you missed a lot of key factors when we get to that sunken eye stage. Think what it takes for somebody to get sunken, you know, like that. If it's not the flu or a really bad, you know, virus or something like that. Lethargy or weakness. If you're, again, you know your dog's baseline. Also, you know, what are you running your dogs around in? Vests, hot, humid conditions, maybe not acclimating them correctly, keeping them in a 68-degree house, and, you know, you bust them out into 97 degrees with 90% humidity. That dog is going to struggle just like you are. You're not going to be wanting to run up and down the street. Also, speaking of streets and sidewalks, what are the temperatures of your streets and sidewalks? Would you be walking on that stuff in bare feet? Something to think about. Also, when we get to the beach, I watch people do this all the time when I was a seashore lifeguard. People walking their dogs on the beach. They kept their flip-flops on, but they're dragging their dog through the sand, and you can't have dogs on a protected beach. Sorry, that's just the rules, not mine. So you have to go beyond the protected beach signs. And it's all over sand. And the sand is directly in the sun from the time the sun comes up till about 4 in the afternoon, well past the heat of the day for the most part. But that sand is already cooking. They're dragging their dog. You know why they don't want to walk across the sand? Because it's hot. And if they had flip-flops, they'd probably want to walk on those too. Anyways, that's a side note. Some reasons also for, you know, dehydration, lack of water intake. Obviously, more fluid out and less fluid coming in. But is your dog sick? Did they get a hold of something? And they're just kind of slowly going downhill. And those are things to notice about. Look at their poop, look at their pee. I pick my dog's poop up every day with those little bags, and I go through it because I know he chews his toys. I want to see what's in it and if it's coming out. And then I was actually at the vet several weeks ago, and they scared me with this sign above the door while I was in the exam room with Sammy. an elastic rubber band could cost you a $3,500 pet bill. And I didn't even need to read any further. I kind of figured out what that was about. So you got to pay attention to your dog, and make sure you're doing the right thing by them. Maybe not leave them in a locked car. You don't need to drag your dog everywhere during the heat of the day. Probably it's kind of unfair. They like to chill. I like to take naps during the day in a nice cool place. Always, and then some things that we can do to prevent this stuff is pretty straightforward, but it's crucial. Always having fresh water, clean fresh water, and a really good balanced diet for them too. Not the garbage food. The garbage food, like, look at the thing about the people who eat, fast food in this day and age, like whatever it is, McDonald's, barbecue, whatever. And if it's not something you're cooking in your kitchen, probably not the best stuff. If you're not sourcing it from the grocery store and then bringing it home and cooking it for yourself, there's just not that many healthy options out there. I'm sorry. So, you're bringing your dog out on walks, wherever it is. I always have a little backpack. I have a go pack for Sammy. It's got water in there, a foldable bowl. He's got backup food, backup poop bags, and then a small first aid kit for him. Yeah, absolutely. Like coconut oil in case his paws get cut or something like that. Maybe not right then, be able to, super glue, that's gonna be painful, it hurts. It's just like that new skin. But yeah, keep a little kit for him. And then if you're playing outside and stuff like that, even if you leave your dog outside, make sure that you're going outside and make sure that, they're getting those hydration breaks. Check that water, because dogs may not want to drink, piss hot water. I don't. I like cold water, preferably ice cold water, but I don't turn the tap on hot and drink that stuff. It's not coffee, it's not tea. And then, we also talk about acclimating your dogs too. Getting them out there a little bit by little bit. It's kind of like bringing a new puppy home. You just don't expose them to the world and, overflood them. It's got to be little by little, and it's got to be at their pace, especially as they get older. That's the bigger things right there. And then, severe signs and symptoms, those sunken eyes, like I talked about, extreme lethargy, or the dog just collapses, refuses to eat and refuses to drink. You got to get them to the vet, because that's why they went to school, and that's why they have those letters after their name. So anyways, guys, stay vigilant, and don't be surprised if you see something in the parking lot that drives you nuts, that makes you want to get on a video and post about it, even if you want to rant for 13 whole minutes, just about. Well, now it is. Have a good day. Happy 4th, everybody.